Enter, rejoice, and log in. Enter, rejoice, and log in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and log in.
The chalice is the symbol of our UU faith. If you have a chalice or a candle at home, it is time now to light it together as we say the same words we say each week at our fellowship. We light this flame as a symbol of new life, enlightening our way as the symbol of the warmth in every human heart. The lighting of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of hope, of peace, of love. May we share that light with all people.
Good morning. I am Marie Luna, and I'm your Director of Congregational Life. Thank you for welcoming us into your home today. It is good to be together, even when we have to be physically apart. If you are joining us from another Unitarian Universalist congregation, welcome. Today we give a special welcome to our friends from Lakeshore Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Manitowoc. We are so glad you are with us. If this is your first time visiting the fellowship, I am so glad you are here. I encourage you to reach out to learn more about our fellowship and all of our activities and events. I will put my email address in the chat box. I hope that you reach out to learn more. Today's service is being led and supported by Allie Peters, our intern minister, Reverend Christina Leon Tracy, our senior minister, Reverend Leah Ungiri, our associate minister, Cindy Darling, our lay worship leader, Kim Hartman, our director of religious education, Steve Seek, our music director, our wonderful musicians and singers, and Adam Robinson, our AV tech. Thank you to everyone who has made this morning's service possible. This year, we are focusing on growing resilience. We are digging in to what it means to grow ourselves and our community to be sources of life, even when things get tough. Right now, we are in the weeks of our theme, Stronger Together. Thank you for joining us as we connect to our community and remember our interdependence. We are so glad you're here. I invite you to settle into your space, wherever you are, setting aside whatever you are able to so that we can be together fully, even from afar.
May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be one. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be one. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be one.
Good morning. Each of us, no matter our age or stage in life, is always on a journey. Our 7 Unitarian Universalist principles call us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and so we take time each week when we gather to hear stories and explore ideas in new ways. Wondering is an important Unitarian Universalist skill because it allows us to remain curious throughout our lives, to learn, and to change our minds as we learn. Well, I've got the Wonder Box today, and I wonder if anyone thinks that they might know what's inside of it. If you'd like to guess, go ahead, place your answer in the chat box, and we're just going to enjoy all the different answers that people place into the chat box. Probably pizza, maybe. I don't know that anyone's going to guess what our object is today. I think it's time. Let's check to see what we have. It was a trick question. This is my Christmas tree, and there is no way that I can get this inside of the Wonder Box. There was a time that I didn't put up a Christmas tree, since to me, Christmas represented a holiday that no longer was a big part of my faith practice or a part of my spirituality. Of course, I would still get together with my family and exchange gifts, and I would go to Christmas parties and all those kinds of things, but the religious aspects of the Christmas celebration just didn't feel right for me. And so putting up a Christmas tree just wasn't something that I did. Well, many years have gone by, and now I put up this tree. Somewhere along the line, Christmas trees, or at least this one, have taken on a couple of different meanings and new meanings for me. When I put my tree up, I don't see it as a symbol of the Christian faith anymore. For me, it's part of a family tradition that my ancestors have practiced for many generations, and one that I continue to practice. And also, my Christmas tree makes my house feel homier because when I look at it, it reminds me of my childhood and of the love that's in my family. You know, this is bothering me. I'm sorry. We never checked really inside of the Wonder Box. I wonder if we should just check to see if there's something in there. I don't know. I think we should. Let's see. Oh, there is something in there. Ah, it's a Buddha. I have a Buddhist practice that is really important to me. It's an important part of my spiritual identity, and it's just an important part of who I am. I realized a couple of years ago that some Buddhists place a figure of the Buddha underneath their Christmas trees. And what that is it's a symbol of the enlightenment of the Buddha on December 8th, which happened underneath a Bodhi tree. So now my tree has a Buddha under it. And now when I see my tree, it not only reminds me of family traditions and my love for my family, and that's in my family, but also of my own faith path. By putting these two things together, it creates a whole new meaning for me, and one that is just right. So today, as we listen to the rest of the service, and we get ready to begin our week, let's remember to honor some of those old traditions and remember that we can celebrate the places where wisdom and love are tucked away inside of them.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Our reading today is two excerpts from the book See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love, written by Valerie Kaur, a Sikh activist, filmmaker, and civil rights lawyer. In her book, she says this: "To me, our faith tradition was not a dead boulder we had the burden of carrying, unchanged, a fixed thing to pass on to the next generation, hoping it withstands the erosion of time. Instead, I saw our faith tradition more like a river, a current of rituals and songs and stories that flows down to us from the past, influenced by each generation before us, ours to deepen and direct into the future." Later in the book, Kaur goes on to say, "We do not need religion to imagine the world we want, but we do need more spaces to imagine and wisdom about how to do it. Prophetic teachers and faith leaders can offer sacred spaces for collective imagining, rituals for resilience, and stories and songs of ancestors that infuse our struggles with purpose. They can lift our gaze beyond immediate victories toward the world we are longing for.
Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
For years, I have felt like the least stressed out person in my circle of friends throughout the last few months of the year. As an atheist, I have not been interested in Christmas since I was a kid with presents and wishes under the tree. A tradition is something that is typically passed on, so maybe it's because I don't have children of my own that it seems tradition is just not that important to me. Traditions are rooted in old ways, are attached to a religious story or some kind of false narrative, and they're repeated on a schedule. For most of my adult life, I guess I've placed more value on new experiences and new ways of seeing things. But then I think of the food we had each year for our family Thanksgiving and Christmas. These foods were always the same. And I realize now that eating them was less about the taste and texture and much more about the people with whom I was sharing this food. It was a tradition because we did it every year. We did it together, and it felt sacred to us. These days, my family's Thanksgiving takes place in late October because my mom, dad, and both brothers head to warmer climates until summer comes back to Wisconsin. Plus, the actual date nor the holiday itself means anything to us. We celebrate only because it is the one and only day my family gets together each year. In other words, it is all about the food and being with family, two key ingredients for a tradition. However, this year, my family's Thanksgiving didn't happen. I must admit, it feels like it might not ever happen again. You see, my family is deeply, deeply divided along political and religious lines, making it difficult at best to get together at all. The only thing really keeping that tradition alive was the momentum of having done it every year. Growing up, the Darling family Christmas was pretty simple. In the morning, we would all come down in our robes to open presents, eat Mom's delicious stollen with some cheese and warmed up little smokies. For dinner, we would have the most delectable beef tenderloin that Mom marinated in a red wine sauce all day. She would add a ton of mushrooms and turn that meat into butter. It truly did melt in the mouth. And if my mother ever mentioned wanting to try something new, there was an actual uproar from the entire family. The traditions around Christmas fell away for all of us quite a long time ago. I have not had that tenderloin with my family for over 20 years. Knowing my family's traditions are mostly dead, I decided I needed to either just give up on the idea or start creating my own. I began looking at those traditions I loved from my childhood. One of the best traditions when I was a kid was getting to open our ornament on Christmas Eve after getting home from my aunt and uncle's fancy party. It was the only present we were allowed until morning. Each ornament was dated and represented something we had done that year. So I can look back on them now and remember the year I received it. Surprising myself and most who know me, last year I bought a wreath, and on it I put all of the ornaments my parents had given me over the years. It was a joy to take each one of these special ornaments out of the box to remember some key events of the year stamped on it. Then I would pick the perfect spot on the little wreath, reminiscent of those contemplative moments as a kid when I would find the perfect spot for the ornament on the Christmas tree. I hung the wreath in my living room and enjoyed turning the lights on at night to watch the ornaments twinkle. I did not really connect the ornaments, the lights, and the wreath to the idea of Christmas. Instead, I connected to those sacred moments when my family was together, and I looked forward to sharing the beauty of the wreath with my chosen family. The traditions that stem from my family of origin simply no longer feed me. There is nothing sacred left there for me. Instead, I look forward to continuing to find new traditions with my chosen family. These will likely revolve around all kinds of social opportunities, board games, good food, trips, gatherings, and, of course, presents for no reason.
Thank you, Cindy, for that meaningful reflection. During my final year at Union Theological Seminary, a mostly Christian seminary, my school sparked a bit of an uproar on the internet. You actually might have heard about this. It made national headlines, and it was all a response to the school's post on social media about a student-led chapel service where people were invited to participate in the Christian ritual of confession. But their confessions were offered directly to plants. The post read, "Today in chapel, we confessed to plants. Together we held our grief, joy, regret, hope, guilt, and sorrow in prayer, offering them to the beings who sustain us, but whose gifts we too often fail to honor. What do you confess to the plants in your life?" And the picture that went with the post showed students and faculty gathered together in the seminary chapel around a cluster of potted plants in the center. One participant sitting cross-legged on the ground, speaking to the plants directly. The idea for this service was to create a space that pushed us to really reckon with our relationship to plants and to the earth. A space to really consider the ways we may have wronged nature. To start thinking of plants as beings that we are accountable to. Now, people on social media saw this post and pounced with their opinions. Many in the comments of the post called Union theologically bankrupt and accused them of being false Christians. Many responses to the chapel service included cracking jokes about Veggie Tales and Little Shop of Horrors, or asserting that the people there must have smoked some of the plants first if they thought that this was a good idea. Me? I thought the service was brilliant and awesome. If I'm honest, I didn't expect that a Christian ritual from my past that I'd let go of years ago could be helpful for strengthening my relationship with the earth. Now, I grew up in a Protestant church, and our ritual of confession was not the traditional Catholic ritual where you step into a booth and talk to a priest. But we did have a prayer of confession in my church's service every Sunday morning, a time when we were instructed to silently confess our sins to our God, and then we were assured that God forgave us. Honestly, I don't really remember what kinds of things I confessed to in my head. I'm sure I had plenty to talk about. But what I do remember was feelings of shame. That's pretty much always what I associated with that ritual of confession. Shame. And when I started to go to UU congregations where confession wasn't a popular thing, I didn't bring the ritual along with me, and honestly, I never really missed it. But I'd also never heard anyone frame the ritual of confession this way before, where the purpose was to create a space meant for us to honestly grapple with the harm that we've done. In this case, harm we've done to our planet. A ritual where the act of confessing itself is meant to be a tool that helps us grow our awareness and transform ourselves in meaningful ways. To me, that seems powerful and really helpful, especially in relationship with living creatures like plants who can't speak up for themselves. I only really ever started to think about my relationship with the environment in a spiritual way when I learned about Unitarian Universalism's 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of existence. Or when I listened to indigenous voices. Or when I explored Buddhism's notion of karma. But here I was, discovering a new and valuable resource in a ritual that had been a part of my own family's Christian heritage. Now, one of my classmates at Union, who's Christian, she helped put together that controversial chapel service, and she made a really great point when she was talking about it. She said that it can be really great to learn from traditions outside of our own. But it's really important to mine the resources from our own traditions as well. I mean, think about it. We can only really, truly wrestle with and grapple with and interpret and reinterpret rituals and stories and songs and traditions if we can claim them as our own on some level. If we're stakeholders in the community where these rituals and stories and songs and traditions are important. If we've got some skin in the game, so to speak. So that's why today, in the middle of the Jewish celebration of Hanukkah, I'm not here preaching a message about Hanukkah. The story of Hanukkah is not one that belongs to my people. I can learn from it. I can be inspired by it. I can draw deep meaning from it. I can even be invited into Hanukkah rituals by loved ones who are Jewish. But it's not really my place to give commentary or interpretation. But how meaningful is it that Reverend Leah and others in our fellowship so often engage us in wisdom and practices from their own Jewish backgrounds, and we get to celebrate that together. Me, I am a Unitarian Universalist who comes from a Christian family. Those are the religious communities that I claim a spot in. Those are the religious resources that have been gifted to me from generations before me. And I'm so grateful for our reading today from the Sikh activist and civil rights lawyer and filmmaker, Valerie Kaur, and how she explains her view of religion. To me, our faith tradition was not a dead boulder we had the burden of carrying. Unchanged, a fixed thing to pass on to the next generation, hoping it withstands the erosion of time. Instead, I saw our faith tradition more like a river, a current of rituals and songs and stories that flows down to us from the past, influenced by each generation before us, ours to deepen and direct into the future. Ours to deepen and direct into the future. What an invitation that is. Asserting that we have permission to deepen and direct our faith's rituals and stories and traditions. Welcoming us to bathe in this river of rituals and songs and stories and traditions from our past, gaining strength from its currents and having a say in their direction. At the end of this month is Christmas, the Christian holiday that traditionally celebrates the birth of Jesus long, long ago. And churches everywhere will be telling the story of Jesus' birth, as it's told in the Bible. There's an immaculate conception, a baby who is both human and God, a baby whose greatness is foretold in the stars. It's really an amazing story. But I've come to learn that this story was actually intentionally shaped to closely resemble the kinds of stories that people used to tell about powerful leaders of the time. Specifically, the story about the cruel and power-hungry Emperor Caesar Augustus, the big leader of the Roman Empire. He was also said to be from Immaculate Conception, said to be both man and God. Someone whose greatness was said to be foretold in the stars. So people who wanted to carry on the story and the teachings of Jesus, they told his birth story this specific way in order to give him authority, to lift him up to a level greater than the emperor. Only in Jesus' case, the emperor's palace was replaced with a stable and a feeding trough. The characters in this story, they were now vulnerable and oppressed. A teenage girl with a scandalous pregnancy, a group of dirty shepherds, a family of Jewish refugees on the run from violence. The story of Jesus' birth was a way for people telling his story, to say no to the oppressive Roman Empire, and instead to lift up the lowest among them. The way it was told made it a story of resistance. My Christian ancestors didn't exactly interpret the story this way, but I now do. And for me, that deepens it. For me, this story now gives me strength and helps me navigate the empire that we Americans live in today. An empire that, tragically, the Christian religion of my ancestors has played a part in. For me, it becomes a story that I really care about retelling. You see, when we reclaim and reimagine the rituals and stories and traditions of our people, we make ourselves and our voices a part of the story. We can feel how we ourselves fit into that larger whole with our ancestors. And we also get a say in how the story of our people goes. We get to provide resistance to harmful voices and narratives that hijack that story. And when we do this reclaiming and reimagining together in community, we can dig even deeper. We can better move toward what is life-giving rather than harmful. Now, I know that I speak with the privilege of someone who has never been directly harmed by the religion that I was brought up in. There are many among us for whom the traditions of our family or of our past might just be too painful to revisit. And that is real, and that is understandable, and that is painful. And also, we in this fellowship community can grieve together and work to help each other heal. And together, we can locate ourselves in the water of Unitarian Universalism's story, a faith that itself has deep histories of ritual and story and song and tradition. Deep histories that oftentimes we might forget to tap into or forget to really claim as our own. But it's a river that we bathe in, where the currents are ours to draw strength from, and ours to deepen and to direct together. In the words of Reverend Christina, Unitarian Universalism is a thing. So let this be an invitation to us all to reclaim and reinterpret and wrestle with those traditions that we inherit. I loved earlier in our service having the chance to hear how Kim brings together her Buddhist practice with symbols from her family's Christmas traditions in meaningful ways. And it was powerful to hear Cindy grapple with her own family traditions to find what was sacred for her. So what are the waters that you find yourself in? What resources might those waters hold? Let us together give ourselves permission to deepen and direct those waters that flow to us from our ancestors, whether blood related or otherwise. Let us make ourselves a part of those rituals and stories and songs and traditions, creating them and recreating them anew as we gift them to our beloved generations to come. Theirs to deepen and to direct in ways that will be meaningful to them. May it be so, and amen.
As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free. From the bonds that bind the mind, freedom that reveres the past, but trusts the dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love. Proclaim the truth that makes us free.
Sharing our individual joys and concerns is a practice that helps us collectively to grow resilience. I invite you now to type into the chat box any personal news you might wish to share. Together we are stronger, never invincible, but hopefully anchored with one another, by one another, able to offer each other shelter from the storm in the form of hope and support. If you might like to borrow some strength from a listening ear, please let me know. I would be happy to make myself available or to connect you with Reverend Christina, our intern minister, Allie, or a member of our care team. Any joys and concerns you might like to submit via our website or by emailing me, we will be happy to include in our weekly email. If you would like to subscribe to that email, please contact our office. Together we breathe, together we sing. But first, some silence.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer.
Each week, we take time for generosity, remembering that the acts of giving and receiving are spiritual practices. As always, if you are in need of financial or emotional support, please reach out to any of our ministers, to me, Reverend Leah, or Allie, so we can offer help, including modest financial support from our minister's discretionary fund. For those of you who are feeling relatively more financially secure, we want to thank you for continuing to give and ask you to keep doing so. There are several ways that you can give to the fellowship and many reasons to do so. Here are just a few.
I have become a better woman, single parent, mother,
human being because of the fellowship. And I'm so grateful for his presence in my life these last several years to help shape who I am now at 40. The fellowship helped actually create at this point in my life who I am and who I'm still forming to be. And I love it. And I'm so grateful for it.
As we come to the end of our service, we will extinguish our chalice flame, even as we still hold its light in our hearts. As we extinguish this flame, let us go our ways with hope in our hearts, with our spirits renewed, and with a deeper understanding of life's mystery. Let us carry the light of compassion and commitment to build a better world.
After our closing words, we will be having small breakout groups just like usual for 15 minutes of conversation and connection. In a moment, we will hear a short postlude song. If you do not want to participate in the small group conversations, then please use that time to log off and leave this Zoom meeting. If you choose to stay, I encourage you to learn each other's names and pay attention to the timer in the corner of your screen so that everyone gets a chance to share. And with that, go in resilience, growing in hope. Go in strength, connected to all that is, and go in peace, knowing that we embrace each other, even now, from a distance.